I saw a motherfucking UFO in the sky.
Okay, back up.
Aliens are real. You know, I don't believe in ghosts, but I've always said aliens are real, and now I have proof because they probed me.
Humanoids. Once again, it is I, Orlok, the scourge of Scandinavia, the defiler of beer pickles, the bane of basic bitches, the harbinger of HorrorWeb. As many of you know, I am here in search of the most vile and disturbing of you wretched, stank-ass humans. Those chosen by me will survive the upcoming delightfully dreadful apocalypse. They will live out the rest of their meaningless lives, scraping the tantalizing turd stains from my toilet after Taco Tuesday. Fast! But first, in Orlok fashion, let us lighten the mood with a couple jokes. Why are ghosts so bad at lying? Because you can see right through them! What do you call a cow with no legs? Ground beef! I'm dying over here!
Wait, I'm already dead.
Today it seems that Scarah and my HorrorWeb crew have a special trick or treat for us. They have successfully infiltrated the headquarters of Dread Central. Well, let's see who my mistress of the dumb, Scarah, has dug up from the grave this time.
Hey horror fans, it's Scarah with HorrorWeb. We are here today to interview Josh Millican, writer for Dread Central and various other outlets, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I also write for Scream Horror Mag, MovieWeb/TV Web, and I used to write for Blumhouse.com.
Well, how did you get started with writing? I think I heard that you started with your own blog, is that correct?
Yeah, I started with my own blog, I actually have to take my hat off to my ex-wife for getting me into it, because when Netflix first came out, they had a just tremendous selection of horror movies that I had never seen before, and my wife at the time, would never watch them with me. So I'd watch them alone, and then I'd be like, Chrissy, I gotta tell you about this crazy movie I just saw. This crazy shit happened. And she'd be like, you know what, Josh? I'd never watched this movie, but I love hearing you talk about it. You should start writing this stuff down. And I did. And from there, I started contributing to various small horror websites, and fuck it. Eventually, I just decided to make a go of it, and now I just hustle with my daily grind.
Was what you wrote about mostly horror movies in the blog days?
Absolutely. I mean, I consider myself a horror movie expert, and I just completely immersed myself in that genre specifically. But it's kind of funny because I guess I've been a lifelong horror fan, but I kind of came back home to it in some ways. I mean, I remember loving horror movies in junior high and high school. And then I went to college, and I was into, reggae music and, other things, this and that and the other. And then it was kind of when Netflix came out again with this tremendous horror library that the world of horror kind of opened up for me. Because I do actually have a degree in writing and creative writing. And I wrote songs and poetry and short stories. And, I knew the mechanics of journalism. So it's weird how it all came back to this, because it wasn't part of my life plan growing up. But yeah, now it's exclusively horror. Now
you find yourself here with the horror heads, right?
Absolutely. I mean, And that's something you'll find, obviously, but, horror, people who like horror movies kind of get a bad reputation. Why would you want to watch something with blood and guts and rape and, all this stuff? But the horror community is the coolest community on earth.
Absolutely. One of the nicest members of any community I've ever been around has been the horror community and the metal community, and they kind of intermingle, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost like we were all the outcasts and nerds growing up, and now it's just like we're grown up and we're proud to be freaks, and we're just really supportive of each other. And it's not like that with other genres. It's not like there's a comedy convention, or a drama, convention, the way you have these horror movie conventions and horror movie film festivals.
Horror movie people are very supportive of each other, horror community people anyway. All these conventions, like, everybody's super excited to see what everybody else is bringing, what they're selling. They're bringing money to spend at other people's booths. And I agree. I don't think you find that at other industry type, get-togethers. So now you're completely immersed into horror all the time. What genre of horror do you enjoy the most, like, as a fan? And is it the same genre that you enjoy writing the most about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I personally like the most is supernatural horror, which is strange because I'm not a believer in the paranormal. I don't believe in haunted houses and things like that. But, I love supernatural horror movies, and the ones that get me, it's that much more profound because I don't believe in it. But like Hereditary, for example, who hasn't been talking about that all year? I was petrified. It was like I wanted the movie to end just because I had been on the hook for so long. It was like I loved it, but it was kind of like after 2 hours, it was just like, please just let the brutality end.
Well, it was well done at the end. Oh, I don't want to. By the time this comes out, everybody's seen it. But at the very end, when she's like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. And when she's pounding her head on the attic doors.
And naked old people? Is that a genre? Okay, Rosemary's Baby.
I think it's a trope, not a genre, but yeah.
But it should be. No.
There's that Rob Zombie film, Lords of Salem, that has the old naked people in it, and it's just...
They're terrifying.
There's something really bizarre about it.
Well, you are looking into your future if you ever get that old, and you're like, God dang, dude.
You're right. There's a body horror element to it. It's like your own mortality. It's like, you're young and you think you're invincible, but this is where we're all going, and it's not pretty.
No way. Okay. So that's what you prefer. What do you prefer to write about? The same thing?
I like writing about them all. And I tell you, it's like I don't even enjoy writing bad reviews. Bad reviews get lots of traffic because there's something salacious about them. People like to hear about, an actor or a movie being taken down a peg, but I love celebrating the greatness of all films, like I don't love the slasher subgenre, but I saw that movie Lake Bottom on Shudder, and I was just like, this is one of the best movies of the year, and it's a slasher. I wouldn't say found footage is my favorite, but then you still find that there's fuel left in that tank too. You see a movie where it actually works, where it doesn't feel artificial, where it conveys everything that, a movie in any medium would. So it's like, I'm just such a fan and connoisseur of horror that I love writing about it all.
That is refreshing to hear. So for me, like clown horror, I was over it until Terrifier came out. And then I was like, I'm going to watch Art the Clown every day of my life. Like, that clown is it's up there with Tim Curry's Pennywise.
Well, the thing about Art the Clown is that he is in basically the entire movie. You think about Pennywise, he's in it for 10 minutes of the 2-hour movie. Art the Clown is there the whole time. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, Terrifier was released by Dread Central Presents, which is our horror distribution arm, through Epic Pictures, and it's been a tremendous success. We've been just amazed and heartened by the impact it's had on the horror community. The Art the Clown fan art. We were at a convention where we saw someone made an Art the Clown piñata. I mean, he's so iconic already, and there's going to be officially licensed Art the Clown masks and costume accessories through Trick or Treat Studios in 2019. So,
that's going to be the costume. Yeah. I wish it was available now because this is the year, man.
This is, and I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that, we're actually co-hosting a screening of Terrifier at the gas station, which is kind of a little local legendary spot. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre gas station was converted to its 1970s glory. We're actually going to hold a screening of Terrifier there, and David H. Thornton is going to come. So, yeah, we're gonna create a situation for fans where they can watch Terrifier with Art the Clown. So
the fantasy out in Bastrop, Texas.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're here right now partly for Fantastic Fest.
Yes, absolutely.
What movies have you seen that you recommend? And then I have a follow-up.
Yeah, well, obviously Halloween was excellent. Seeing it for its American premiere, because it already played at TIFF, so it had its North American premiere, but its American premiere. It was amazing. You can't help but get caught up in the excitement, and it really is as good as the best Halloween movie installments. If the original is your favorite, you'll really like it. If you liked the Danielle Harris sequels that kind of get ignored, you're still going to like this one, because it's got that vibe, it's got that nostalgia, and Michael Myers is as cool as he's ever been. So I absolutely adored that.
What about Jamie Lee Curtis?
I mean, she's just fantastic. It's like she can do no wrong, and she's Superwoman. And what she brings, she humanizes Laurie Strode in a way that is so profound and so timely. Because the way she described it herself, because she was there for a Q&A, Laurie Strode in 1978 suffered incredible trauma. And on November 1st, she went back to school with a bandage on her arm. She had no help. There was no psychiatrist for her. There was no trauma counselor for her. So it's her redemption, and it's real. She really conveys that trauma. And it's timely, because we're at a point where it's like, people who have suffered trauma are standing up for their recognition, and it's just so empowering, and she just brings it 100%.
Very timely.
Yeah.
What other movies, maybe that you haven't seen at the festival, but that you have seen or that you've read about that are going to be the must-sees of the season, this year?
Well, yeah, for both, Fantastic Fest and going forward, I'm really excited to see Overlord, which is the latest by Bad Robot, the studio that did the Cloverfield franchise. Oh. That's playing tomorrow at Fantastic Fest, and the big question is it part of the Cloverfield franchise or isn't it? And either way, it looks great. A World War II zombie epic sort of thing. I'm looking forward to seeing Hold the Dark, which is the same writer and director who did Green Room and Blue Ruin. He's got a film called Hold the Dark, which is coming to Netflix in a few weeks, but it's having its premiere out here, and I'm really excited for that.
Speaking of movies where you're just kind of holding on to your armrest. I remember Green Room. That was one where I was begging, please hurry up and let this be over. It was such a good movie, but it was very uncomfortable.
Hey, you want to hear something weird about Green Room that it took me 2 watches to notice?
Why? What?
None of the dogs die.
Wait a minute.
You think so? You'll think so? Because I have friends who are like, I won't watch a horror movie if a dog dies. And I was like, oh, you don't want to see Green Room then? And I watched it again. They all live. They don't all come out unscathed.
Right. I remember one getting hurt really bad, and I guess I assumed it died. Does it show the dog later?
Well, there's one dog who I think gets hurt and runs away, and we never see that one again. And then there was one that Patrick Stewart's character said, put it down.
Yeah, that's the one.
Right, but it doesn't happen. So all the dogs survive that film.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Green Room. That's good. So tell me about your creative writing that you do. Outside of journalism.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. I wrote what I call now a novel, but at the time it was a horror serial where I wrote a chapter a month, and I released it on Morbidly Beautiful, which is a horror culture magazine that's run out of Texas as well.
And my nickname. I'm just kidding.
So yeah, they were gracious enough to give me the platform, and I released a chapter a month for a full year. And now I'd love to turn that into a novel if I could. And, one of my dreams has always been to be a famous writer and autograph books for my fans, so maybe I'll get into that as well.
Well, that would be fantastic. I mean, you've definitely got the chops for it. I've been reading your articles. And also, aside from your more lengthy articles, you also have some really entertaining lists that I've seen. My favorite being the things that were scary from childhood that weren't supposed to be scary. You know what I mean? Like, that weren't intentionally this scary movie. Like, tell us a little bit about that one. Pull out a few of those.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting you mentioned that article because one of the great things about working at Dread Central is we have a team and we brainstorm together. So that actually wasn't an idea that I brought to the table.
Really?
Someone else brought that idea to the table. Dread Central co-founder John Condit, he was like, I've always wanted to see a list or an editorial about this. And instantly things started popping into my mind, The Never-Ending Story, Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the Dark Crystal, all these things that are legitimately scary that
Terrifying.
they showed us in, a
when we were
G-rated
children.
context. Yeah, it's like, what were they? No wonder we're all horror fans,
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think those things turn the key. And then if you're around my age, the 80s was the best decade for horror. First horror movie I saw was Night of the Living Dead, but the first 80s horror movie I saw was Poltergeist. And my mom, of course, thought it was satanic and, said I couldn't watch it. And of course, I watched it, a bunch. What was the first horror movie you remember watching?
Oh, geez. I think the first one that I remember watching religiously, and it probably was one of the very first ones I saw, Return of the Living Dead. One of my neighbors had a VHS copy of it, and every weekend I remember knocking on his door and being like, "Hey, Jack, can we watch Return of the Living Dead again?" I definitely had a thing for trash, and the whole naked dance on the crypt, and the, it was right about the time I was turning 13 or 14, so I'm like, this is some good material for later on, but I think a couple other films that had a real tremendous impact on me were both in 1986. That was the year that both Aliens and The Fly came out.
Oh.
And they're such different movies, but between the two of them, I was just sold. Yeah.
I was obsessed with Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, but so creeped out by him that it took me years to find him sexy, actually. You know how a lot of people are like, "Oh, he's sexy." It took me forever to find him because he's throwing up flag stuff and dissolving things, pulling his teeth out. If you think Jeff Goldblum's sexy, go watch The Fly first and then come back and tell me that shit's sexy, because that's not. Do you think he's sexy?
Yeah, I think he's aged remarkably well. I hope I look as good when I'm his age. But you're absolutely right that he was he was putrid. It was hard to look at him, but at the same time, you couldn't look away. It was my first experience with real body horror. And another little bit of trivia. There's an amazing scene that they cut from the theatrical version, which you can find on YouTube, where he actually experiments with fusing a monkey and a cat. And it's so gory. I mean, they did all the production value on it and everything. It's not where they filmed it but decided not to do it, so it's really crappy. If you look up deleted scene from The Fly 1986, there's just this amazing fusion scene that you've got to see.
I'm totally doing that tonight. My dad showed me the original Fly. Have you seen the original?
No, I haven't, but the whole help me.
Exactly.
It's so iconic. I feel like I've seen it in the image of the guy who's wearing a lab coat, but he's got the huge fly head and one claw hand, I was like, it can't be better than the Jeff Goldblum.
It's not better. It's different, but...
Right. But I mean, I was just that one made such an impression on me. I was like, I don't want to ruin it. For me, that's The Fly. And the crazy thing is, when you say The Fly, you don't have to clarify that you're talking about the remake. It had such a huge impact that it really is its own thing,
What about Universal monsters? Do you have a favorite?
I've always had a thing for the Mummy, and I don't know why. Maybe it's a weird fetish.
Bondage.
Yeah, maybe. I mean...
no, it is. No, I'm kidding.
There was something about the Mummy, the fact that he doesn't talk, the fact that he moves slow, that I always just really liked. And I think that's why I ended up liking characters like Jason and Michael Myers, who are, exactly. There's something about that that's just, you don't know the story and they're not going to tell you.
The nonverbal thing, Art the Clown, he's not necessarily moving slow, but he didn't say a word, right?
Not a word, yeah.
it's all his face and in his hands, and I love that. He's one of my favorites now.
Just don't call him a mime, because that's likely to have you endure his full fury.
I'll try not to.
He's a clown, not a mime.
Definitely not a mime. Okay, so is there anything that you won't cover, you won't write about, as far as horror goes?
Like I said before, is I don't enjoy writing bad reviews. So if it's something that I just think is too over the top that I wouldn't recommend, I would probably just not write it. But I mean, I have seen a Serbian film, and I've written about a Serbian film because of the cultural impact it's had. And almost like the story of the film has become more interesting than the film itself. It's like, baby fucking let's get over that, and let's talk about like the fact that this film even exists, the fact that this guy wasn't lynched after releasing this film, and let's talk about the fact that this guy like now has no life beyond being the director of a Serbian film. He probably wishes that he could be known for something else at this point. It's been 7 years and people won't shut up about a Serbian film. But so I mean, I wouldn't say there's something that like I would not at least give a chance. There's nothing that I would exclude categorically, but I just wouldn't enjoy writing about something that I didn't enjoy.
Oh, well, that's what they say. Write what you enjoy, write what you know. You know horror. What about, so you're going to Cult Classic next weekend. Mm-hmm. What are you looking forward to there?
Well, Cult Classic Convention is basically a Texas Chainsaw Massacre convention because it's so close to several of the filming locations, and there are going to be 3 of the actors who played Leatherface there, plus, a bunch of the side characters. I think Carolyn Williams is going to be there. Stretch from Part 2 is going to be there on Saturday. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'll actually be moderating some of the panels. So I'm going to be doing a panel with David H. Thornton, who plays Art the Clown in Terrifier, and the guy who plays the man in the mask in Strangers Pray at Night. I'm going to do a kind of like a Psychos interview with both of them, a panel. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Movie Psychos panel. Is that what you mean? That's fresh. Okay. Well, I have a question for you that we ask everybody. If an alien probed you, would you tell anybody?
Yeah, I think I would. And it's interesting that you ask, because I told you before that I don't believe in the paranormal. I don't believe in ghosts. But when I was maybe around 8 or 9 years old, I can still remember it clear as day. I saw a motherfucking UFO in the sky. It was a flying saucer. It was like some of the ones you see on YouTube. Not that those are necessarily real as well, but someone faked something very similar to what I saw in real life. One of the spinning ones with lights all the way around the borders. So
wait, tell it. Okay, back up. What was going on right before you saw this?
It's kind of interesting. I was actually going to bed. It was after daylight savings. So I was young enough where like I had to go to bed at 8, but it wasn't dark yet. So I remember being kind of like pissed off and looking out the window on the second story. Now, about half a mile away maybe from where I was living, it was Sacramento, California at the time. About half a mile away, there was a stadium, and there was some either high school or college football game going on, and there are lights going on over there. So I'm just kind of like watching that and checking that out. And all of a sudden, this fucking UFO flies down and does a little flyover and hovers above the stadium for a second and then just flies right off.
But it didn't suck you up into the bowels of its ship and...
No, but if I ever was, then I'd be like, see, I told you when I was 8 that aliens are real. I don't believe in ghosts, but I've always said aliens are real. And now I have proof because they probed me. And you can look at the trauma or whatever you need to do for proof.
But would you sell the story?
I would tell it to anyone who would listen.
But I mean, would you sell it? You wouldn't sell it. It's free.
I feel like something that profound. Yeah. Put me on CNN and boom. I mean, I'll option the rights for a movie. Sure. Yeah. But like, I'll break the news immediately. I was probed. Aliens are real. We can put the question to rest. Now let's move on to the next big role.
Well, we really appreciate you talking to us. You've been great.
I had a blast. Thank you so much. I really love what HorrorWeb's doing, and you guys are awesome, and you're a sweetheart.
Oh, thank you. We love what you're doing, too. All right, so let us know in the comments below what you might want to see Josh write about in the future. Also, let us know if you've seen any alien spacecrafts or aliens like Josh has, or even if you've maybe been probed. And until then, I'm Scarah for HorrorWeb, and I'll see you in your screens.
There you have have it, my beastly breed, straight from the loose lips of Dread Central's own creepy creative genius. I hope Joshua doesn't mind picking poo from my privy for the rest of his morbidly mortal existence. Tune in next time, HorrorWeb viewers, to see who else survives the cataclysmic carnage of your pitiful, puny, putrid, and other P-words planet. And until then, remember, which is which in the witching hour? Zombies rise and brains devour. Vampires fly and sip on blood. Werewolves howl in your neighborhood. But none of these will save your soul as your death bell begins to toll. For it is I, Orlok, who you should fear as I herald your death. The end is near.